Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Comics Della Morte. We got a new guest tonight. Uh, you want to introduce yourself, Chris? Let people know who you are and how you started doing comics and art in general.
All right. My name's Christopher Michael. I am the creator of C.R.I.T, Covert Reconnaissance Infiltration Team. That name doesn't mean anything. It's based off D&D, and we just need to have something that went along with C.R.I.T. So there you go.
Right.
The entire concept is when we were playing our Dungeons and Dragons game, I had homebrewed this kind of superhero. For me, it was going to be a superhero story because I'm a huge fan of comic books in general. You know, Batman and Spawn are my two tops. But I wanted to do a superhero campaign. And for about 10 years, we always joked around and tried different ways of doing it. But the problem with superheroes, they were always too overpowered. So I spent months creating my own homebrew for superheroes. And after the first session, I was like, this thing is too chaotic not to do something with. So I created a comic book. And I taught myself how to draw to do it. Originally, it was not going to be something that was released to the masses. It was more just for fun. And after, an issue, getting out there into a few people's hands and hearing that people really enjoyed it, I talked to the group and everyone was like, yeah, let's continue on. So here we are releasing our 7th issue.
That's awesome. That's just dedication right there. That literally, if you have the passion and the drive, you could teach yourself to do stuff that you thought you would never do, And I always say it, if you got time to watch a TV show for 30 minutes, you got time to really hone on your craft that you really want to do for a career or just a passion that you have in general.
Early on, actually, I had watched an interview with Todd McFarlane, and he said he dedicated an hour a day.
And
when 2020 hit, I dedicated a lot more than an hour because we couldn't do anything. So
Well, also too, I know I don't know if you probably ever heard it, but I was part of the group that did the 100 Days of Making Comics, and you dedicate every 30 minutes to an hour a day for 100 days straight.
Oh,
Yeah.
But no, I never heard of that. But I think if everybody would dedicate 30 minutes to an hour a day just to something you want to get better at, it's there. I play guitar. You can see on the wall, I have one of them over there. I've got 4 more on this wall. I was actually signed to a record label, subsidiary of Sony Records, for about 6 years. And
that's cool.
When I joined the band, I actually didn't know how to play guitar. I made them think I knew how to play guitar. I lied to them, and then eventually figured it out. And we practiced relentlessly until I figured out how to play. So another story where I just didn't know how to do something, but I wanted to do it, and I just figured it out. That seems to be the story of my life there.
Well, I just find it cool that, how you were saying this started out as a tabletop, Dungeons and Dragons type of thing. That's just, inspiration that you could always draw from. And if you really think that you have a good story that could go on for a couple of issues, why not? I mean, I can't remember who says it, but if you're a creative person, you have at least one good story to tell to the world that's different from everybody else's.
We have so many good D&D campaigns, and Dungeons and Dragons. You can see the books on the wall over there. It's something that I do hold near and dear to my heart, because my friends and I, the guys in the book, almost 15 years ago now, I had moved to Boone, North Carolina. I didn't know anybody. I moved there for work. And I had known these guys through work. Either they worked in the same mall, or they worked with me, or my roommates. And they were like, hey, you should come play D&D. And because I'm a big fan of Mass Effect. I'm a big fan of Dragon Age and the Star Wars games and stuff. And they're like, well, you like all these games, and these games are based off of Dungeons and Dragons, so you should play D&D. And I was like, I'm a nerd, but I'm not that big of a nerd. And I wouldn't do it. And finally, they came in as a group, and they were like, well, hey, give it a shot. I hated the first time we played. The guy that was running it, none of us had fun. And one of the other guys who had caliber in my book actually came up and said, hey, I've been working on my own version of Mass Effect in D&D. I think you'd enjoy that more. And I was like, yeah, I'm a big sci-fi fan, and I know Mass Effect, so at least I have like background when I play.
Gotcha.
So we played that for about 2 years. Every Sunday for 2 years, we played Mass Effect. We still talk about that entire campaign. And so when we got into making Crit, I didn't want to just redo, Mass Effect, but I really wanted to give my friends a reason to get together every once in a while and play, because for 10 years we didn't even talk. Like there was like some of us didn't even talk to each other for 10 years. And so getting back together in that room and playing D&D and having fun. I mean, we talk all the time now. If it's not daily, it's at least every other day. We're chatting in our group chat or playing video games or working on something. Like we're always together now. We just took a group vacation, which was like a first, and we've known each other for over 15 years now. So it was kind of cool. And the reason we're all able to get together again is because of the game and this comic book. So it means so much more than just, having fun with your friends or, as a hobby. It's kind of, my wife calls it my version of Tag. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie Tag.
Yeah.
She says it's my tag, and she embraces it and loves it. And like,
that's awesome.
The wives like hang out while we're all doing nerd stuff. And
our
kids are friends now. It's crazy,
That's cool. So with your friends, are the characters in the book like characters based off of what your friends had for the D&D game?
Not only are they based off the characters, they are them. So
okay.
If you look at the characters' names, like Brad Haynes, that's a real person. I've tried to get as close to how they look as possible. I'm not, like I said, I taught myself how to draw while doing this. So I get their likeness. Austin's been hard. He's the youngest guy, and he gives me a headache because I can't draw him.
Yeah.
But they're them.
It's hard. I mean, anyone out there, it's one thing to create a large image of a character, but then to go about in a comic book where you're literally drawing that character in so many different angles, it's a whole different ball field.
It's been tough, not gonna lie.
And even heights, like
angles.
Trying to make, like if this person's supposed to be 3 feet, they have to look like 3 feet in each panel. And
I have a fat guy in the group, Reach.
Yeah.
In real life, Obi's not really that fat. He is like the heaviest out of the group of us. But it was an ongoing joke that he had to be fat because I had drawn him. When I first started drawing, my reference for Obi was Doc Ock, because even in real life, you put the guy's name is Obi in real life. He looks just like Doc Ock. It is uncanny. And so I used it as a reference because I was just trying to teach myself how to draw and like the shapes and stuff. And I drew him way too fat. And they were like, okay, well, from now on, he has to be fat every time you draw him because it's hilarious.
Gotcha.
And then at the time, I was like, oh, that's cool. But drawing a fat person from one side and then having them turn is a lot different, than one would think. And so that was every time they do something in the game too. They'll laugh. Like this last session we played last weekend, they did something really stupid, and I just put my head down, and they were like, "He's mad because he has to draw it. he has to figure out how to draw this crazy stuff that we do."
Right.
And, it is fun. It is a challenge. There's times that we have to edit things because they just get. If you've played D&D, it gets way too out there. I actually created a secondary Instagram account called Caliber's Corner because generally it's Caliber that does something off the wall, stupid and crazy, and everything that doesn't fit within the story we're telling, I move. I'm like, hey guys, I'm listening because I record the sessions. How all this gets written is I actually record it while we're playing, and then I go back and I storyboard it based off of what I'm listening to. So
it's
I storyboard the entire thing, and then I take that storyboard and turn it into a comic book.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's a very unique process from what I've heard. To me, it just made sense when I first started. But I also have
Yeah.
a background in film. I've done producing and things like that for some independent films. And
That's
so
cool.
that made sense to me. And now I look at it and I'm like, wow, so I'm just reverse producing it. I'm doing the storyboarding after they've already acted it out. And there's parts where we get in and we're a bunch of friends sitting at a table. So, and everything happens like kind of at random. So you're going to have these moments where this doesn't make sense. Or say as a DM, I put something in that I think is cool and they think it's complete garbage. So they ignore it, or, it lasts for one session and it gets thrown away. I take those out. Even some of those things that might be fun and might be exciting for what they are, they either don't add to the story or they take the reader out from the story, and I just omit those. Those can go anywhere. We can transpose them anywhere. There's some fight scenes I put in just because I wanted to battle test some of their moves. Because again, it's a homebrew. So I don't know, people that backed our campaign last time got this. It is the 5th edition version of the game. And
that's awesome.
All of the rules are in there. And we're playtesting this entire thing. We've got over 400 hours into just the creation of the book.
Oh, wow.
And then we've played roughly 40 games at 6 hours a take. So do the math. We've put a lot of work into this. And it's really cool to see it all come to life. It's even cooler when, and this is the part that people don't really get to see, because the guys in the book they're not big on social media at all. But I've gotten some of them that'll call me. One of them's Brad. He's a police officer. And so he has some bad days. And he's a detective, so he's not like a traffic cop. But he does he's seen some stuff. And I'll post like fan art that comes in or comic book reviews into our group chat. And there was one day somebody had drawn Caliber, and they did a really cool like picture of him. And he gets in there and he says, I just had the worst day of my entire career. Some bad stuff had happened at work. And he was like, but I opened this up and it made my day that much better. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome to me, because he's called me and been like, he went through a hard time in his life, but really like something that nobody wants to go through. And he said, at least I have something to put that energy into. He's like playing and writing, because he's like my DM. So when I have all these cool, crazy ideas, he kind of reins me in. And he'll call me and say, hey, like, at least I have this to look forward to. And we had this situation with Boulder where Terrell, his wife was at work one day, and this guy comes in and he was like, hey, you need to tell your husband to read this comic book I'm reading. He's like, there's a character that reminds me of him. And she's like, wait, before you go into what comic book? And he goes, oh, this book, C.R.I.T, I just found it. Now, I used to live in Boone. Terrell lives in Boone. Neither one of us know who this person is. He just found our book.
That's cool.
Like, that was freaking amazing. So after that, his daughter, who's like, I think like 7 or 8 now, was like, Dad, you don't look like Boulder. Because Boulder's, he's like the Superman-esque like physique, although he's really short. And so Terrell in real life, he was an Olympic level wrestler.
That's awesome.
So he just went back. He's a wrestling coach now, and he was like, well, screw it. He's like, I want to look like Boulder. So he works out, he diets. I did bodybuilding for a few years, so him and I did a diet plan and a workout exercise routine. His wife lost a lot of weight. He got in super shape, and he was like, now I can wear a Boulder costume for Halloween and be fine.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Man, that's awesome. I don't know if you ever seen the show, because when you were talking about that, it brought me back to a show on Amazon called Vox Machina.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Like, I just thought it was awesome that you had a bunch of voice actors just playing D&D, and they decided to turn it into an animated show. I'm like, that's just a great concept,
So I thought at first that I was doing something pretty original, because
making to a comic book, that's pretty original.
Well, when I thought about that, I was like, hey, no, I don't know any D&D comics, And I sent it to some of my friends who work in comic book shops and things, and they're like, "Oh, this is like that Deus Ex, or they was it Roll 20? It's Critical Role." And he's like, "You
Okay,
should check
yeah.
out Critical Role." And so I was like, "Oh man," because they have a comic book based off of it as well.
Okay.
And I was like, "I guess I'm late to the party," but I was like, ours is a little bit different because I do know they do have some scripted stuff, and I know they also have a production team in that stuff. And I was like, at least ours it's a little random and it's modern, so you know we had that going for us. I didn't want to rip something off. I was like, man, I hope we didn't rip this off. And I checked it out, and I love it. But I was like, I'm glad they stuck with traditional D&D because I don't really want to drop orcs and things.
Well, not just that, but with traditional D&D, like with the comic book, yes, you need to have like storytelling going on, but if you're just using so much dialogue that's taking up the panel, you need to like find a way to like reword it so that way it's not just taken away from the image of itself, because that's that's what comics are. It's like basically a great way to show a movie but not having to tell too much with it.
And that's Brad really comes in there because when I first started doing a lot of this, I was very dialogue heavy because in the game they're very dialogue heavy.
Yeah.
And after the first issue, I'd finished it and I sent it to them, and he was like, he's like, it's really dialogue heavy. I said, well, you guys are dialogue heavy. And he said, well, can we not do some like show then tell, or show and not tell, or tell and not show kind of stuff? He's like, you need to balance it. And he's not even a big comic book fan. He just said, from like a reader's aspect, he goes, if I read a novel, it's a lot of words because I do the rest of the visuals.
Yeah.
Goes, but if you read a comic book, the comic book should do those visuals for you, so you don't have to read that this person's doing this or this person's doing that.
Yeah, exactly.
So I scrapped so much and went back and redid it, and it changed the whole flow of stuff. So what I'll do is I'll storyboard about 3 or 4 pages, and I'll send it over to them. Brad and Terrell are really my main. I call them big filter, little filter, and
that's awesome.
I'll send it to them and say, hey, and I send them the portion of the recording that goes along with those pages, and I'll send some of my dialogue changes that I want to make, because sometimes we're either, we live lives too, and we play remotely. Yeah. So sometimes you might have someone that's on a phone and they don't really react the correct way to a situation. You don't get the same like influx that you would want, or you don't, so I try to like edit a little bit, and they'll shoot it back to me and either say, yeah, that's cool, go, we'll mess with the dialogue later. Or I'll get like a page recently, they were like, can you cut that head off and just redraw that head completely because it shouldn't look like this, it should look like that. Or there's been times where Brad sent me a message and was like, hey, because he's Brad in real life actually does know 7 different forms of martial arts. He's a black belt in multiple, and he's actually working on
that's awesome.
His own form of jiu-jitsu mixed with something else. And so I drew Caliber, like arm chopping somebody doing something. And he's like, that's cool if you want to keep it, but in real life, if I hit somebody that way, I'd probably break my wrist or my finger. And, so he sent me pictures of what that would look like. And then we got together one night, and he got with Terrell, and he goes, this is what this would look like. So they would do all these poses, and I would just take pictures, and we storyboarded it off their pictures. So it's kind of cool having them around to give those critiques and really fix the flow. And
oh yeah, definitely, it feels more like natural and dynamic that way. I don't know if you watched it, but the Mortal Kombat, the new movie that came out a couple years ago, or was it last year? I think it was last year.
The new one with the random guy that didn't exist before.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
The guy who played Scorpion, he was told, hey, just fling your rope with the spear around like this, and this. He's like, no, if I'm going to do it, I want to do it the way that you would actually do it in the martial arts style. And it just turned out and looked so much better doing it that way. So,
the guy that plays him is amazing too.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Sadly, very underutilized in that movie. The movie would have been so much better had he been the main character. Just based off his acting, not even just the writing, just that dude's phenomenal.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That was, I'm a film, and especially Mortal Kombat is the inspiration for my logo for Homebrewed Heroes. By the way, if you look at Mortal Kombat 11 and then look at ours, you'll see the reference. But
yeah, most definitely.
The movie was okay for a Mortal Kombat movie, but they got Scorpion and Sub-Zero perfect. Everybody else they could literally recast the entire thing, just keep them, and I'm happy. I think they did a really good job casting those two.
Yeah, I was happy though to see them actually use like their video game fatalities. That was cool.
Yes, I agree.
Especially with the hat.
The amount of good things in that movie to me outdid the amount of bad things, so I was forgiving. I do hope in the sequel we get a more, it's hard to say accurate to a video game, right? But a better representation. I think what really took it out for me was following the new main character, because we have no connection to him, whereas people that have been playing this since the 90s have connections to like all the other characters. You didn't have to pick Scorpion or Kung Lao or Liu Kang or any of the guys that would fit kind of like your normal protagonist. They could have picked anybody. We could have seen it from Kano's eyes. We have a connection to Kano because he's the first guy with a cool laser beam.
I actually like the guy who played Kano. He was funny.
I give you that too. They did a good job casting him. I do want to know why they didn't just take the cast from the YouTube show and just say, here, we're going to make this live action now, because all those actors were freaking great. They're perfect.
Yeah,
casting.
for sure.
That's I can talk about that. If you want to get me off on a rant, talk about Mortal Kombat, Star Wars, or Mass Effect. Those three I can talk forever about.
Yeah. So, do you have any other artwork to show for your campaign?
Yeah,
because I really dig it. Like, all the characters from what I've seen, I really like, but I was more drawn to the cat. Just I could tell he's supernatural and he has some type of magic going on.
So, do you want me to share my screen, or do you want me to pick up some of the books I have next to me?
Oh, you could. I think you could share your screen. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I can actually show off the. I've got the first few pages done. I have a lot of them sketched out. But these are the inks are done on these pages, and some of the colors. I'll go back and make some edits. I just hit the share button. I think you have to approve it though.
Yeah, I think you might have to show your book. The bad thing about the computer, being on the phone it's hard to do that.
Totally understand. So I'll show this cover. This is the last book. It was called Intestinal Fortitude, which means like don't crap your pants. So the book, I'm going to go to the page that really inspired us creating a comic book, because
I put you in solo layout just so that way they could see it bigger.
So this one page and this one line of dialogue, let me get it on there. If the cream is sour, do not devour. Was and still is a line of dialogue that Terrell had said during the game that changed almost everyone's play style, because he had finally grown into his character. This is the 5th session we ever played. And for those of you that play D&D, it takes a little while for a group to get into their characters and get into the play style.
Oh yeah, for sure.
The running joke here was that they were supposed to infiltrate this facility, and the guards right here that you see, they pull up and the guards jump out and they're like, you can't come in here. It's a super secret facility. And they pretend like they ran over one of the guys. And then they say that the guy's on drugs, and they just pretty much in D&D terms, they tried every deception that they could to get into this facility, until one of them pretended like he was sick, and that was Terrell screaming, like, if the cream is sour, do not devour, saying he had bad tacos. Yeah. And then they, like in this panel right here, just beat the crap out of everybody. I
really like how you went, sorry, cutting you off. I like how I'm seeing that with most of your panels, you want to focus on the character, because sometimes a lot of beginner people, they have their background so detailed, and it's kind of like having the main character be lost in the beautiful artwork that's there. So it's, I'm glad to see that you really took that time to like, okay, every background doesn't have to be like a fully detailed, because it's just characters that have to get their message across.
There's in book 3, I went really crazy with this warehouse, and
Gotcha.
I wound up backscaling a lot of the background because I'm drawing this warehouse, and you have this. I wanted depth in it, and I wanted you to feel like you were in this big warehouse.
Oh yeah.
But when you're drawing panels, sometimes it took away. So I wound up scaling back a little bit, and instead of drawing like 5 posts, just drawing one. The whole purpose of a background for me is to keep the reader invested in the environment. You don't need to
for sure.
always. I like having some that are very high detailed. Like if I have a big panel, I have
like a bird's eye view.
Right, like this. Okay, so this page right here, this big double spread, you can see all the background where there's like some containment units and things, and they have all been cracked open, and there's some bodies in there. And it's
that's awesome.
But after that, I really don't go into as much detail. Like I have the walls and stuff, but I want to focus on the stuff that's important to the story, which is Caliber shooting people in the head.
That's cool.
But actually, my favorite thing in this book that I drew is right here. Bones jumping away from the big giant robot. So
man, that's really nice.
The robot doesn't exist in real life, clearly. So I had to to get the reference that I wanted for this. I took blocks and I built it out of blocks so I could see what the depth on that would look like. Just so I could draw and then I shaped it all as I was drawing it. I'm blessed to have the wife that I have because she's a phenomenal artist and a photographer.
Okay.
That's what she does professionally. Cool. So she has a trained eye for, all the poses. And she does a lot of weddings. She does a lot of group photos, things like that. And she's been doing it for years. And she's just naturally talented in this area.
Yeah. Gotcha.
She comes from a long line of artists and things. So when I first started, I actually love telling this story, and it's the most depressing story, but also the coolest story. The first book I drew was not that great. And I had taught myself how to do it. I actually used 2 different action figures for the entire thing as for all the poses and the lighting. So, I was unemployed for a while, and she told me to do something. So I was playing D&D and working on this comic book between jobs. I'd been working since I was 12 years old. So, my wife and I, we've known each other for 18 years now. She wanted me just to take a break and enjoy life for a little bit. And so before I got a new job, I took these action figures into her mom's art studio because her mom's an art teacher. And I would set them up and I would take pictures. And that's how I taught myself how to draw these things. I would pose the figures how I wanted them so I could have the lighting and I could have the pose. And then I'd go and I'd grab my tablet and I would draw according to however they looked.
Nothing wrong with that. That's how Alex Ross learned how to do most of his stuff. Just wear a costume and then take a picture.
Actually, so him, there's, my father's another phenomenal artist that I know. I've watched what he does. And so it just made sense. But the problem was it didn't always translate the same way. And I was using action figures, so it's not really anatomically correct all the time. And she goes through this entire 18 pages that I had made over the course of 3 months. And I colored everything, I drew everything, I put the dialogue in, and I handed it to her and I said, hey, check this out. This is what I've been working on. And she scrolls. We had just laid down, started watching TV. She paused the TV. She finishes the book and she hands the tablet back to me, turns the TV on, doesn't make any eye contact whatsoever, and just says, it's okay. And just goes back to watching TV. And I'm not lying. That was the exact expression, just straight faced. It's okay, and goes back to TV. And I was crushed. So I didn't say anything the rest of the night. I contemplated in my head giving it up because she was going to be the one that gave me the best feedback. You know, at this point, we've been married for 4 years. You know, we were best friends for 11 years before we even got together. If anybody's going to tell me the truth, it's this one.
Yeah.
And I had sent this to a few of my friends, and they were like, "Yeah, that's cool." Not like any amazing feedback, just, "Hey, that's cool. I'm glad you're doing something." And the next morning, I went to Best Buy and I tried out the iPad with Procreate on it, and I said, "I'm going to upgrade my setup, and I'm gonna do this." So I go home with the iPad and I start drawing, and I draw another panel, whole page. I spend almost an entire 9 hours just sketching and drawing this page. And I bring it to her and I say, "Hey, I think this is going to be page 1 of my new book. What do you think?" And she says, "Are you really gonna like continue this?" And I was like, "Well, I really like it, and I kind of want to. It's motivating, and I want you to say I did good." And so she sat with me on every page for the first 2 to 3 books. And every page she would go through them with me. And she was brutal. She would erase things. She would circle things and say, "This is wrong." She would draw over top of it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But, you know, she said, "If you want my feedback, I'm going to give it to you."
Yeah. And I mean, that's true.
She's the sweetest person in the world. So, you know, me saying this, you'd meet her and go, "This is the person that did this." But she really did. She helped me. Book 4.
Well, it's one of those things like you could have talent as a kid, you know, talent singing, playing the guitar, anything. But there's at some point where you have to grow out of that talent and increase it with skills. So, you know.
Yeah, really helped me with the skill part. I want to find, I don't have it next to me, sadly. I want to find book 4. There's a page in book 4 where I was about 5 or 6 pages in, and I've been working on this one. I was about to go to Kickstarter with it, and I showed it to her, and she looked at me, and she finally said, she's like, "Listen, you don't really need my help anymore." I was like, "Really?"
"Oh, that's awesome."
She's like, "Yeah." She's like, "Every once in a while, there's a thing I would fix." So like like this book I'm working on, I'll show you the pages for book 6 since this is the book that's going to Kickstarter. There's this page, which we're going to work on some of the faces just because coloring wise, I'm coloring this book as well. Oh, that's the cover. And that's the cover. Come on. So it's on the screen, so it's going to be a little bit blurry. But we're working on the faces. So this is all my colors, all my artwork, and she just wants to adjust, like, and I think it's because of the angle. So you can see like her face there doesn't really match the face down there as well. And she showed me what the problem was, and it's a quick fix, so we're going to edit that. But on this page, she was like, other than there's some lighting issues on the girl down here, she was like, other than some lighting over there, we just, we're good. But she had nothing to say at this page. I hope it shows. So there is C.R.I.T and his little animal companions. It's an owl and a chameleon and a talking cat, and they all talk. I was for sure thinking she was going to rip that one apart, and she absolutely loved it. So it's kind of I think one of the best feelings is being at that point where I feel like I can draw something and not need this approval and having her critique it and edit it. It's been quite a journey in 3 years. And going back to what you said earlier about, honing your craft and doing all this stuff. When it started, it was just kind of for fun. But when we started putting the books on Kickstarter and getting the following and it growing into a little bit more than anticipated, I was like, well, if I'm going to be putting stuff out there with my name on it, I want to be the best that I can possibly give,
Yeah. And remember networking. Networking's key. Get to know other comic book artists that are out there, build friendships, because people think, oh, everybody's out for themselves. I'm like, we all love comics and we all have a story to tell in different ways, no matter what type of genre of comics it is. And we know how hard it is, especially in indie comics, to get our work out there. So, it's networking and finding a good group of community to really be a part of.
if you look on my Instagram, you'll see that I'm part of a group called the Savage Sandbox. It was
Gotcha.
me and about 8 or 9 other creators that had come together, and we all have the same, passion and drive.
Mhm.
And I've learned so much from those guys, and they've, I think as a collective, we learn from each other.
Yeah.
Some of the guys in there have these characters for 30 years they never did anything with, and now they're releasing books, and some of them are phenomenally talented artists. And so I would send them stuff and say, hey, what do you think? And get their feedback too. And I
Mhm.
think that having those people that are willing to circle things and send it back and say, hey, work on this or change that, or this kind of, doesn't look right. I think those people are great to have in your corner, especially people that you all have the same kind of goals. You're all working on a book. You might not have the same art style or same story type, but you're all working on books.
Yeah.
And the camaraderie in the indie community is, it was very welcoming, and it's been quite an experience. Actually, one of my best friends, Jason Farrow from The Convictor, that's the book he works on.
Mhm.
He hadn't put a character out yet, hadn't worked on a book. We were just talking on Instagram, and he was working on his first book. I was working on my second at the time. And he just shot me a message on Instagram, said, hey, can I give you a call real quick? And it was a little bit weird, some grown man wants to call me and talk about comic books. So I was like, yeah, sure. That was in 2019, no, it was 2020. And this past year, my family and his family went to Disney for a week together. So,
Awesome.
It's kind of cool how you can meet, these people and become good friends off of, a likeness of something that, you grew up from when you were a kid.
Oh yeah.
We're doing
Like-
a crossover. That was the reason for a call, was because I had asked him about putting his character on a crossover eventually. And
That's
apparently
awesome.
that got his brain thinking about making a book. So
That's awesome. So with your guys' books that you come out, this is going to be your 5th one, because I have the link to the Kickstarter in the description. Like, do you guys feel that you have like I'm like, okay, this is the ending story for our characters, or do you feel that it's going to go on for a while?
So we actually have 38 stories written.
Gotcha.
I'm believing we're going to end at 42.
Okay.
If you know the number 42, you know why I'm sticking with 42.
Yeah.
Out of the 38, I think we're cutting like 2 of the recorded sessions. My plan is 42 books. And because actually in game, we're at the very end of Crit. I know where it's going to end. A couple of actually only one player really knows where it's going to end.
Yeah.
One player's dead, so that sucks. He rolled really bad. He died, and then he had some family stuff come up, so he never re-rolled another character.
Okay.
We still talk. We're still good friends, but life does happen. And he
For sure.
But he still supports the book, and he helps us out, and he does what he can. So he's still part of the team. His character is just canonically dead. So that happens. You play D&D, you roll bad.
Yeah, exactly.
You get killed by a bunch of rabbits. That was a game that I played.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it'll be a 42 issues. I've been working really hard to get to a point where I can do 4 a year.
Awesome.
I do everything in-house, so that's a lot of work on one person. But the harder
for sure.
I work, and the cool thing is, the more I learn about the drawing, the faster my process goes. And so book 5, so this issue right here, this was a 60-page issue, which is really big.
Congrats.
Most of my books are hover around 26 pages. So that took me roughly 4 months to finish. And I was like, okay, so if that takes me 4 months to do 60 pages, then I should be able to do about 25, 26 in roughly 2 months. And I'm in month 1, and I'm right at like 9 pages finished of book 6. So hopefully I'm within that time frame. Some books will go easier than others. The less action-packed, like giant robots that I have to draw, were fine.
Yeah.
It's like 3 books in a row they fought robots, and that's been fun. Trying to figure out, the turning of a 20-foot robot. That's the challenge now. Is I had to take and figure out the perspective of a 20-foot robot versus like a 5'5" human being.
Yeah.
And what does that look like? And how does that hand, like how big's the hand? You know, like those things. And that's really what takes most of the time for the drawing is figuring out perspective.
Yeah. I have a buddy, he's been a part of the show before, and, you know, he's the type of, I always forget what they call it, but like, you know, if there was like a murder, he would go there and would have to scope out the whole area and draw like an image of it. Wow. And for his comic, he'll literally make a diorama of what a room looks like, so that way he knows where everything is placed in that panel. And then he actually, like, his dinosaurs versus Marsbots, so aliens versus dinosaurs and humans in between. So literally scoping like aliens and dinosaurs from scratch by using 3D model clay is like really awesome stuff. So, and it's hard work. It's hard work, but you know, perspective is everything. And people think, oh, well, if you tell a great story, if you have a lot of action, people are going to notice. Oh, they'll notice. They'll notice.
So actually, it's funny that you brought that up. What I did, the reason I had the drawing tablet to begin with was I used to have to draw and map out crawl spaces. I did a crawl space repair. So I would crawl under people's homes and I would take all these pictures and all these measurements and I would sit under a home with a tablet and I'd have to measure 30 feet this way. And it had to be precise because we would go in and install systems like filtration systems, water systems. We would seal these crawl spaces. So we need to know how much material went in, and to give a homeowner a quote, I would have to literally build their crawl space in this 3D drawing program. Yeah. And I still use it to this day to build some of the 3D images so I know what a room looks like.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Funny. That's how I draw the robot. Is I just use blocks, and because it's not, I can't, making a 3D image of these characters would be.
Yeah, it's one of those things. People say that, you know, a real artist doesn't need to use reference, but to reality, you have to. Not everyone's going to have a perfect image of what something should look like. You know,
I think art is also subjective or objective.
Yeah,
it's always different for everybody. And I remember when I used to draw when I was a kid, and I had a dream when I was like 8 years old of making comic books.
Yeah.
And I picked up my issue of X-Men #1, and I wanted to draw just like Jim Lee. And I sat there for an entire day with my pen and pencil, trying to draw Wolverine like Jim Lee. It didn't look like that. I threw it away. I said I sucked, and I said, but I still want to do art. So I took all my old garbage pieces of I had like plastic toys, and I would just break them because I was throwing away stuff, and I started breaking them, and I threw them down on this piece of cardboard one day. And the cardboard accidentally had glue on it. And so I was cleaning up and I picked up this board and all these things were stuck to it. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Because the way they had fallen looked like an image to me. So I took spray paint. I was like 9 years old. I spray painted this board. And I said, well, this is art now. Because I did something. So everybody has their own different version of art. I took trash and thought it was art. My mother loved it. I was 9 years old. So it was the coolest thing I'd ever created. But, you have people that, I've seen the argument that digital artists aren't even artists.
Don't get me started on that.
I love that argument.
But yet people are getting away with saying like AI generated art is art. Like literally, a guy just won a art contest, and he won first prize by entering a AI generated art piece. I'm like, that's horrible. You didn't even do anything, you know.
I mean, all they did was type in the very specifics on what they want the AI to create, and it probably took multiple turns just to do it. Yeah,
by putting keywords and just making it better. But for someone like me and you, we know how difficult it is to like start from scratch to finish, and it's just crazy. Thank you.
That's probably the one thing that I would say isn't really art. It's just computer. It's an AI. You're not even doing any work. You're not putting the creative process. You're just saying, oh, that looks cool. That thing put all that stuff together in a good way. There was nobody with a thought process behind it.
Mhm. Yeah, because even with digital art, you still have to take that blank canvas and start with your pencils and your inks and your colors. It's a lot of work.
Yeah,
Trust me.
it's as someone who, if you asked me 5 years ago if I'd ever do a comic book, I'd laugh at you and tell you I couldn't even draw anything.
Yeah.
And I've put I've put so many hours into trying to just draw, something I think is suitable to give to people.
Hmm.
That's just the biggest thing to me. If I'm gonna put it out there and people are gonna hold it, I want every book someone to know they got the best that I could do at that time. And
Yeah.
it's really cool to see, like, I've had people ask me, what's your character? Like, these are all your friends, but where are you? And I always tell them, well, you're holding my character. My character is the comic book. And
Yeah.
every book, my level up is the artwork.
Hmm.
And so when I put in that perspective for people, they'll go back to issue 1 and go, oh, wow, like, actually, this is kind of cool. And on the last campaign, we did a trade paperback. So you get to literally, like, page to page, 220 pages of just print. And when I first flipped through it, it was probably one of the best feelings to be able to literally hold a timeline of my skill in my
Hmm.
hand. That was actually really, really cool. And I'm looking forward to the next one because now I'm taking over colors and I want to see where I can go with that.
Yeah. Now we're getting. I don't know if you want to talk more about your comic because we're getting like the 47 minutes. So this
Yeah.
being a horror related show too, we we like to get people on here to talk about their comics and support their comics. And I like D&D because yes, it has its fantasy, but with D&D or any type of story like that, it has its horror elements.
Yeah, we actually have a character in book 5.
Yeah.
Sanguine comes and goes. So he's been in 3 different books, and every time he shows up, he changes. So he's the main villain in the first book, and he actually almost kills Crit.
Gotcha.
In game, I actually did kill a character. We had to retcon that because I didn't want to redraw. When I was working on book 1, I had just finalized
Mhm.
the artwork for the characters, and I killed him. And I was like, but I just literally sketched out your character, and I spent 2 weeks figuring out what your character looks like. There's no way I'm going back to doing that. DM call. We somehow find a way to revive you.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But so in the first issue, you see him. He's just this very strong guy. You don't know why.
Hmm.
He comes back in book 3, and he's like a sumo. And you don't know why. He's just all of a sudden looks like a sumo. He's still strong, but throughout the time, he looks uglier and uglier. And in the 5th book, when he comes back again, he's very muscular. He's like very like muscular and ugly, and he's eating people.
Yeah.
And we go into detail on that in book 6, but it's because he's turning into an ogre and is
Mhm.
making him like into this like cannibalistic mentality where he has to constantly eat. His superpower, and I love to tell people this, his superpower is he absorbs kinetic energy.
Oh,
But if
that's
he
awesome.
doesn't use it, his body treats it like calories. So he can either have like a stronger attack, or he can be fast, or he can use that energy however he wants. But if he doesn't use it, it gets stored and he turns fat. And
I
so
like that. That's nice.
as he burns off the energy, though, he gets really, really skinny. So at the very end, you see him, and he is this scrawny, frail thing because Spectre had burned him, and then they figured out that by using his like ethereal fire on him, he was just burning the energy, because the energy is what's keeping him like almost like re-healing him. Just like if when your body uses energy to heal a wound, his
Yeah.
body was forced to use all this stored up energy, and it depleted him, and he's like this frail skeleton looking thing.
Mhm.
So that's like my horror-esque character, because he's cannibal. He has all these negative side effects to it's funny too because he gets fat, but
Yeah.
it's just I wanted to have some kind of scary villain here, and I was like, well, that'd be kind of cool to have him eat people, and so we did that. But real quick, just about the book before we move on to the horror thing. Just the Kickstarter does launch October 12th. It'll go 30 days. So I think
Awesome.
that's November I want to say November 11th is, or November 13th, whatever that Friday is. It'll go till then.
Yeah.
I have energy drinks are going to be on this one. So we have the C.R.I.T custom energy drink. I've got all 7 books on the Kickstarter as well. So if you're new and you want to check it out, you can pick up all of it right then and there. We've got
everybody, the link is in the description. So
check it out.
Back it up.
And I appreciate everybody. But yeah, let's get into some horror. I love horror.
And while we're talking, I'll put it up here too if anybody wants to take a screenshot. But yeah, so man, from what the guy who Jeff, I think that's his name, he's been reaching out to me about different people. He told me about you and other people I've had on the show. And yeah, I'm really waiting to see what more you have, because the whole like fantasy role playing, and then the whole like you got like some magic in there, like with the cat and stuff. So yeah, just really cool stuff. But with horror, what would you say would be your favorite horror movie of all time, and why?
So someone would argue that Aliens isn't a horror movie, but it's more of a sci-fi movie. But I think it's like a mix of both, and that's my favorite.
The first one definitely is, but the second one, yeah, it's more of like a action horror. You know,
Alien, the first one though, is still I love it because I'm the kind of person who, if I watch something I like it, or even have an idea if it's good, I'll go read about it. And I liked Alien as a kid; it was cool. I didn't appreciate Alien until I got much older, and I learned everything they had to do for Alien, and all the things they did just to make it scary, and how they built the alien, and just the stuff that went into that, like not telling everybody what was going to happen on the chess scene, so you actually got authentic reactions. I love that.
It's one of those movies, like I'll watch a horror movie now if there's just so much CGI, I'm not into it as much if you have practical effects. That's why things like Aliens, John Carpenter's The Thing, anything like that where the monsters are like animatronic and everything, it just makes it so much better.
So my first exposure to scary movies, horror movies, was the Friday the 13th. We were at a house in Ohio, or we were on vacation, me and my mother, and somebody had it playing, and I had no idea what it was. I watched maybe 10 minutes of it. My mother wouldn't watch it. And then it was a few years until I was exposed to horror again. And I was actually sitting down to watch Hear No Evil, See No Evil.
Oh, yeah.
One of my favorite movies when I was a kid. And my stepdad had taped Chucky at the end of it. Well, when this is back in the day when you had to have a separate machine to rewind tapes.
Exactly.
I had already watched the movie, so no one rewound it. We put the tape in, thinking it was rewound, and it kicked up Chucky. I had no idea what it was. It was a doll.
Yeah.
And I watched almost all of that movie before anybody came in and turned it off. Now, I had a My Buddy. I don't know if you know what My Buddy is.
Yes. My funny story is, my sister, who would usually be watching the show, she had a My Buddy doll before the movie came out. Yeah, and they did that on purpose. They really did. Like, people can't tell me that My Buddy and My Pal Guy, their names are similar, and even the way they dress is very similar. They, like, someone had to like, okay, we're making this movie, come out with this doll. Because after that movie came out, my sister would not play with My Buddy doll, and we would find ways to like have him appear stuff just to scare her.
I duct taped mine, and I stabbed it against the wall, and I put it in the closet, and I locked the closet. And that was why my mother wouldn't let me watch any more scary movies for quite some time after that.
That's funny.
But my stepfather and my father were both big fans of Stephen King and horror movies and stuff. So I was around them. My wife and I actually love it, the older one and the newer one.
But Tim Curry, that man, he does everything horror amazingly. Like, even with The Last Unicorn, him playing as the Darkness, aka the Devil, was amazing.
Oh God, the not the last unicorn. Well, I guess that's the name. What was the other name of it? I can't think off the top of my head. The one it has the short guy. I can't think of the name. Dang it! And he was the devil in it. I thought I had a different name.
He was known as the Darkness.
Oh, but with the name of the movie, I can't think of it.
Oh yeah, I think it was called the Last Unicorn, because that's what they were trying to go after, is get the unicorn's horn. Or maybe it's Legend. It was Legend.
There you go.
Yeah, I think it's called Legend. Just mixing up titles of movies, but basically, yeah, trying to steal a unicorn's horn.
Big ones that I got into. I watched Cat's Eye as a kid.
Oh yeah,
I did like that one, and it didn't really scare me. I think it's because I had a cat in it, and I just paid attention to the cat the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why it didn't really scare me, but the movie Puppet Master.
Oh, which one?
Do you remember that?
There's so many of them.
The very first one I had watched.
Now I got to ask you, who's your favorite puppet? Because mine's this Tunneler, the guy with the blade on the head.
I love that dude. That's funny.
I mean, we have to be. I mean, you're probably not way too much older than me. I don't know. I don't know how.
I just turned 39 last week.
I'm gonna be in 2 weeks. I'm gonna be turning 37. So we're pretty much close.
Yeah, we're right there. I watched a few of them. The 6-shooter guy, I did really like him too.
Oh yeah,
he was
6-shooter. Yeah.
For a movie that was supposed to be horror, as a kid who plays with toys, to me, when I saw Toy Story, I was like, I kind of already saw this,
Right.
Just a more demonic version of it. I like stories where even if you're trying to go with a horror or a scary feel, you don't have these moments that like take you out of it. I've seen some where there's like gratuitous just to be gratuitous, and
yeah,
I leave it open because I've seen gratuitous sex scenes just to have them. I don't like those.
Yeah, I don't like torture porn. I hate the whole concept, and I'm gonna say it blue in the face, and we always use the example. People who love the Human Centipede. Oh my God, that movie's just wow.
Nope,
I can't.
No, thank you.
Yeah,
I think you can accomplish what you want to. Like less is more with horror for me.
Yeah,
and
and don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. 80s had a lot of like body horror, like John Carpenter's The Thing, the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, the Friday the 13th movies, but there was a story to it. It wasn't there just to show constant like nudity and constant like let's find a way to show the most guts without having much of a story to it.
And I don't know if this is actually be considered horror, but I always enjoyed Army of Darkness.
Yeah,
it is based. It is Evil Dead, which Evil Dead was great too. I love the way that progressed into this horror comedy.
Well, see, that's what I love about horror. Like, even if you're not making comics and you want to make movies, horror, unlike other comics, like superhero comics and stuff like that, you pretty much know what it might be. But with horror, there's subgenres. So it's like, if you want to make a horror comedy, you could do that. If you want to make a sci-fi horror, you could do that. Slasher, or even a romance where you have a guy trying to save a woman in a giant tower, like a dark fantasy.
Yep.
So that's the beautiful thing about horror. There's so many subgenres you could work with.
I got a question. Do you think American Psycho would be considered a slasher film? I've had this argument before with people.
I mean, yes, and like, I don't know, because the whole thing, I mean, spoilers, if anybody's watching, we all know he didn't really do it.
Yeah.
But
I absolutely love that film.
It's a great
very violent when it needed to be, and although I don't want to say it was like scary, it was a lot of shock value. So I recently read an article where everyone thought during the filming of the movie that Christian Bale was just the worst actor they had ever met, and they didn't realize he was supposed to be playing the character that way because no one told them. So they were getting genuine reactions from these people, and I really appreciated that, because Christian Bale has his hit or misses, but I
Mhm.
loved his portrayal in that movie. Like he did such a good job. Like the scene where he's running down the hallway with the chainsaw.
Oh yeah. Hmm.
You know, or he's just dressed in plastic and he's literally preparing this guy to dismember him, and he's putting Huey Lewis in the news on.
Right.
Like in even the sex scene that turns it, it's weird and it is what it is, but it's just like you're watching him. Like the entire thing, you're wondering what's wrong with this dude. And at
Hmm.
the very end, when it drops all the info on you, and you're like, oh wow, like I don't know, I've always appreciated that movie, and I put it in my slasher category. It's has its comedic value, it has its drama,
Yeah.
but just the scene where he completely like puts the plastic out, almost like Dexter style.
Hmm.
Just that scene, I just love how we. And I also don't. I'm not a big fan of what's his name. So
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah.
never really liked him. So he had like
No,
a couple
but
of good movies, but
yeah.
that 30 Seconds to Mars thing really got
Hmm.
me. Um,
No, but with horror too. I mean, there's nothing wrong with comedy. I mean, I'll say it till I'm blue in the face. My favorite horror comedy of all time is Killer Clowns from Outer Space. I just love
God,
that movie.
I gotta
And they're
love it.
making it, and next year they're coming out with the video game where you could play as a clown and kill people. And
That
then
is so cool.
thanks to my sister, my birthday's in 15 days, but she sent me an early birthday gift with like different killer clowns on shot glasses and a
Oh,
big
that's
cup.
cool.
I'm like, heck yeah.
Actually, I was talking before. I can't say anything about it, but one of the films I worked on is a horror film,
Oh, okay.
and I believe that's what we just got an award for something, but I won't know until the end of October what the award's for.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but it's a it's a long premise which we've shot for it. Pretty much, it's just a run. I say it's a run of the mill horror film because I'm not allowed to know a lot about the horror film.
Yeah.
But when we were shooting this, there was a scene where I was filming with another guy, and my body's being taken over by this like ancient evil kind of thing.
Hmm.
And in the shot, I get shot at, and we had
Basically, a
scripted.
typical 2000s like sci-fi film.
Yes. It's the story's a lot. It's an overarching story. I'm not allowed to know everything until they
Mhm.
actually know how they keep that stuff. But I was told, hey, this is your character. This is what's going on. So this is what we're gonna shoot. And in the scene, this detective is supposed to shoot at me.
Yeah.
This guy brought a
Okay.
loaded gun and shot a loaded pellet. It was a pellet gun, but I had no idea I was actually getting shot at. And
Oh
I
man,
physically got
Pelican's so
shot
hurt.
with pellets without knowing it. And that right there was like, all right. We need to go back and figure this out. But apparently, because of whatever that scene did, I'm getting something for it. I'll know in December. I thought I just actually figured that out, so that's kind of cool. But
yeah, that's cool. There's like, I was gonna say, there's so many people that I've had on here in the past that's like, yeah, I wrote this horror comic first as like a movie idea, and then it transitioned so much better into a comic that we went with that. Like we had someone on the show recently that used to work for Trauma. And I'm like, oh man, that's awesome. It's like, yeah, back in the basement, they had the old Toxic Avenger costumes and stuff. I'm like, oh, that would have been great to see.
I think horror has, you can have so many different things in horror because people argue that the new Doctor Strange film had a lot of horror elements to it too.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So I think the horror genre is, you can go like super scary in horror. You can go comedy in horror. You can just have.
They're making Werewolf by Night.
Yep, I'm looking forward to that. I'm not a very.
And if you pause the trailer slow enough, you can see Man Thing.
That's good because then weren't they talking about doing it as a TV show at one point? I guess they got nixed when whatever DC's version failed.
Yeah, well, I mean DC, like they have Swamp Thing.
There you go.
Yeah, but like Swamp Thing, that's amazing piece. Bernie Wrightson, great horror artist, did Frankenstein, and yeah, just I'm happy to see them go into more of the horror because you have so many characters like Man Thing, you got all these different like horror elements, and we'll see how that introduces into the Marvel universe.
I was bummed that the Universal Studios like horror universe they were trying to create. I was actually kind of sad that failed. I thought that would be really unique if they could find a way to tie in all those horror films together.
And that'll be our next question. Who is your favorite Universal monster and why?
Ooh, that's tough. Only because growing up, we used to have all of those. Like those were the movies my brother and I. I don't want to be cheesy and say the werewolf, but it might be only because that was the first one I was ever introduced to. Frankenstein as well. I'm gonna have to actually probably go with Frankenstein just because that was my Halloween costume that year that I saw it. So
yeah, Frankenstein I love just because the concept is that he's more of a victim than a murderer.
Well, exactly what I was gonna say was, as a kid he was scary for a little bit to me, but again I'm always one of these kids who even as a kid I would read things and try to figure it out. And I read the book. And then I went back and I was like, well, the doctor's actually more of a monster than him, because he was Frankenstein's monster. And so putting that, because I never really watched a lot of scary stuff, but when it came to a lot of, especially the black and white movies that we used to watch with the big giant crabs and things, as a kid, I even did that. So when I watched it again, I watched it from the perspective of Frankenstein being the actual like monster, and the monster being more of the good guy and being like and that kind of changed it for me. So I'll probably say Frankenstein because I never really cared much about the werewolf because he was just a werewolf and that was fun. But I dressed like Frankenstein. I loved it because I got to paint myself green.
Yeah, because with Frankenstein, I think it was in Bernie Wrightson's book, if I'm not mistaken, where he's talking about, if I'm playing the piano, is it that's something that I know how to do, or is it something that the person that I'm using their hands is? Because he's made up of different body parts from different people.
Yeah, and that was also unique too, because when like some of the other movies later on went into some of that to where he
Monster Squad.
Love that movie. They had different takes on it. I'm trying to think of the movie I watched recently that had a different take on him, but there's just so many. So the other one I was also going to throw in there and mention was the Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Oh, great design!
Because of the costume design. My father used to watch that one all the time,
and that was Jaws before Jaws came out.
He was just trying to take the women into the water. It was like a typical monster. It reminded me of Mario Brothers. The princess is always getting captured, and that's what it reminded me of. I was like, oh, this is just Mario Brothers.
Yeah, the Creature from the Black Lagoon doesn't get as much love as I think it should.
They haven't even done any like remakes of that. Oddly enough, I think he was supposed to come in if they did like a Universal Monster universe. Invisible Man didn't they do something with him in the past like 10 years?
Yeah. But it's one of those things like you have like the original Phantom of the Opera that was a monster before the musical. We'll probably not see that ever happen in a lifetime.
I wonder if any of those are going to if the licensing is going to be expired on it. People can...
Well, you could make your own Dracula and Frankenstein book. So that's already in public domain.
Well, those two are just so overused, though.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It'd be really cool to see some of the other monsters, and that's why I was really excited for them to create a universe where those monsters were. Just to think of a universe where monsters actually existed and they all existed together, and said, what if they teamed up?
Yeah.
That'd be scary, but then you'd always have the wonder of like, well, which one of them would actually be the worst out of the group, and then they'd probably wind up, turning on each other, and maybe Dracula would turn them all into vampires. Speaking of Dracula, the newer Dracula movie, apparently it's getting a sequel. Actually, I like that one. Although they humanized him a little bit, but
Was it Untold that you're talking about, Dracula Untold?
Yes. I guess it's going to be a sequel.
Yeah, I really like that one, especially when he was like using the powers and stuff like that. I like when the bats turned into the fists. I thought that was pretty cool.
I was actually pleasantly surprised when they said that was going to be a sequel. Luke Evans is I've always enjoyed his work. I was bummed they didn't cast him as Namor. I think he would have been a good Namor. He has the hairline for it. That's about it. But he's a good actor, and I really enjoyed Dracula. So I'm stoked for the new one.
So now going on, who would be your favorite 80s slasher and why?
80s. Well, I mean, you have that's tough too. Freddy kind of holds as far as like if you're talking about like slasher, I guess he would be like my number one only because he has the fingers for it. I've actually met him too, and I love that he embodies that character so well too. I'd go with him. Plus, the just the scenes alone in that movie and all the special effects they had to do to make that happen. And they're always like that one always stuck with me. Jason, I never understood. He just walks slow and still catches everybody. Yeah, I'm gonna go Freddy. And
gotcha.
Freddy vs. Jason is still a good movie. I don't care what anybody says.
Yeah, I actually really enjoyed it. It's definitely it's one of those things I enjoyed the movie because you got to see that fight at the end between the both of them at the camp was amazing. I love that fight. Or even the fight in the Dream World where Freddy's treating him like a pinball machine. Just really funny moments. And the characters, both of the killers had a moment to shine and show why people love them so much.
Now, see, if you had gone a little bit later and said 90s, we would have my favorite, which I'm actually bummed that about the last one, but Scream was awesome. I think that's just because of the age that I was at to appreciate it. And Matt Lillard's in it, and Matt Lillard is just a great human being to begin with. And he was Shaggy. So
well, the 90s, like besides Scream, they were introducing things that people really fall in love because I love that now because let's face it, a lot of horror movies back then, the minorities would always be killed off first, and then you have like this awesome badass character. Like if you were a kid in the 90s, you had to have balls by saying Candyman in the mirror.
Yeah, I will say, yeah, you're right on that one. I would never say it. My brother, but you do say it. Nope, not saying it. Nope.
And then we waited for one of the siblings, our nieces and nephews, to get in the mirror, and then for one of us to pop out of the shower as soon as they said it. We would mess with each other back then, growing up as a kid.
What was it? Let's see. The teenage ones, like the I Know What You Did Last Summer, and like those were fun. The first time you see them, especially when they first came out, they had their jumps and things like that. But I did appreciate those too, because they were accessible, I guess.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. But the 13 Ghosts, have you seen that?
Oh man, yeah. Yeah, I've seen a lot of movies.
Well, you and I could go along then.
I could say that I would love, even like HBO or someone needs to do this, make a TV show where you're showing each ghost story in detail. Like I like how like they had the bonus features where you're able to like know their life before they died and afterwards, because
bonus features.
Just each character's story is really great, and I would love to see like the Jackal like have his own like mini series, because that is a badass character right there. The one in the with the metal box around his head, just really cool character.
I thought they all had like
tragic endings.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Was like you actually kind of felt bad for them.
Yeah, especially the mother and the dwarf mother and the big baby guy. because remember she was raped by the tall man in the circus.
I thought they were talking about doing something with it, but I guess I'm wrong. Um, I was recently trying to figure, like, my wife and I always try to find something. I was like, I wish we could find, like, I wish they would redo that one or expand on that, because it was just they all had really cool, like, stories about them, and you didn't get enough time. Movies also in the 90s, early 2000s, having a 2-hour movie was unheard of. Unless it was,
for sure.
Especially guaranteed hit.
Especially, me and you both know, and if I can remember, like even with Titanic, when they had those movies together, they had an intermission. Now you had to sit through like a 3 hour superhero movie with no intermission.
We're used to it by now.
Yeah, exactly.
They've trained us to do that, so I think you could pull it off. Did you watch the 3-part Netflix? I think it was on Netflix. The Fear Street. Did you watch that?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I would have seen that in the theater, all 3 of them as one. I thought that was done really well.
Well, that's like why I love that you have so much horror out there for like everyone. Like Stranger Things. I'm so glad that show came out, and it has its gore, it has its horror, and like especially someone like you with the D&D, like actually seeing like Vecna, and if you pay attention to him, the guy who plays Vecna, just like in the D&D, actually has one hand bigger than the other, like he's supposed to.
Well, if you see on my screen the big red box that's above my D&D, this is actually the Stranger Things D&D campaign.
Yeah.
My wife and I, every season that comes out, we rewatch the old ones before, because I think Stranger Things came out like one of the first years we were married, so we just really got into it. Love that series.
And I know once the whole series completely ends, I want to do like a complete breakdown, because on here we like to talk about comics, but sometimes we just like to talk about horror in general. So we'll talk about a whole show about nothing but werewolves and stuff like that. So yeah, definitely that's a plan, is to talk about Stranger Things, just the whole series as a whole and how well it carried itself.
And it just like any series, you're going to have your ups and downs, and it has a few of the stumbles, especially I think the second season.
And, when they brought in the people with the girl with the illusion powers.
Well, hopefully, and I'm sure they've done a good job so far of like talking and listening to fans. So hopefully we get some closure on that. But a lot of people don't know that when the show was originally pitched, that every season was going to be another decade. So you were going to have 80s, 90s, and they fell in love so much with the kids, they were going to keep them, because even 11 was supposed to die in the first season.
Which is understandable, because most horror movies, especially the ones that have kids, like Monster Squad, Stephen King's It, all that stuff, like it's a a key thing. If you have horror movies and a bunch of teenagers, they're usually the ones who are going to save the world.
I think the thing that I like about it, especially the newer ones, is you get to go back and look at that tragedy that they had when they were kids.
Oh yeah.
Then they get that revenge as a like old, when they're older. I like that, and in Stranger Things, those guys have even said how much they were inspired by Stephen King.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I mean, you can see it in the writing of the show, and so I think that was one of their key things for having it be different decades. And then when they realized that they were going to keep this cast, they had to take those ideas and then make them flesh differently. So most likely, the character of 8, was going to be a different kid with, not even like tied to it, or maybe they were going to have like that facility still doing experiments or something to make that happen.
Yeah, like a spin-off if they wanted to.
Right, and so they probably fell in love with either the idea, and then they were like, oh, like especially because I think those guys too. They've said that a lot of the storytelling comes from them playing D&D. And in D&D, you have characters that you create and throw out there that are just never seen again. Yeah, and 8 has been that character for us. I'm just hoping to get some closure have her show up, like the Avengers. There's a little portal. She just shows up and does her thing.
Right.
I kid, if they did that, that'd be really cheesy. But I do hope that they did give us some closure on that character because she was cool.
Oh yeah.
And her team was fun too. And there's a well-known bodybuilder, the big guy. He's in there. He's actually very, very funny in real life. So I thought it was cool to see him in that.
That's cool. So, like, was growing up as a teenager, we're roughly around the same age. Mm-hmm. What did you ever have a favorite video game growing up that was horror based? Like, some of mine was like Silent Hill and Clock Tower.
Give me 1 second. Somehow my cat got into my room and he closed the door.
Oh yeah, not a problem.
And so he's not going to stop until I let him out. Hold on. He'll figure out the door's open at some point. Silent Hill. I mean, I've always been a huge Resident Evil fan. I don't really know the newer ones as well after 6 because they kind of veered off from the storyline that I was following. Resident Evil 1, I actually just replayed recently and still love that game.
Oh, yeah.
Resident Evil 2 may go down as one of my favorite PS2 games.
Oh, yeah, Nemesis. Amazing character.
All right. Another great thing about those games was keeping that camera style and like using the environment to just creep you out because it's not really scary having zombies walk towards you. It's scary because of the environment you're in and you have this limited viewpoint. So the zombies are able to creep up on you and stuff. So I think that in itself, like just their utilization of the environments really got me. And it was closed. You had a haunted mansion full of zombies, and apparently it had. And I'm a huge sci-fi fan, so if you throw anything sci-fi into the mix, I'm always going to love it. That's just the nature of me. My favorite movies of all time are the original trilogy for Star Wars. So and there's a whole story of why, but it got me into everything. And so any little piece of sci-fi after that really just, you've got sci-fi in there? Yep, I'll like it. I'm good. So Resident Evil, as far as the old school horror games, that'll get it. Now, if you go Sega Saturn, they had they had some good horror games on there. Because of the it was like a video. It was I forget the name of the game I played on Sega Saturn. That was like, so my group of friends, systems weren't cheap when we were kids. They're still not cheap. Just got an Xbox the other day, and I was like, dang. But we would. So what my friends and I would do, we would all buy a different system, and then we would trade, so we could all play the games. And I had some friends that were a little bit more, rich than we were, and they had multiples. But we would still trade between us, and that way we could play all the games. And so I got the Sega Saturn, and my buddy gave me some of the games, and there was like some horror game in there, and like an RPG and stuff. I'm an RPG fan. But
nothing wrong with that. But that's like during that time period, that's when like even especially now, like horror games for PlayStation 5 and Xbox are like definitely got your horror elements there. I'm trying to remember one that's really good. That's really scary. You're basically going through a sane asylum, and you have like, crazy guys chasing you, then a shadow. It's a very good game. Just can't remember on the top of my head.
I haven't played. I've played a few games now. I haven't really played a lot of horror games on.
But when they had horror games for Nintendo, those weren't scary. Those were just frustrating. Trying to beat Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street for like regular NES, that was so hard to do.
So I've been playing Back 4 Blood with my friends. See, if I play video games now, it's generally like multiplayer with my friends, so we can.
Yeah.
Back 4 Blood, it's just Left 4 Dead. It's the same game. just a little bit better.
Well, I don't know how big it is now, but like the Friday the 13th game, when it first came out, everyone was playing that. It's like, oh, I'm going to play as Jason and kill people like this, and this.
Well, because you could actually play as Jason, and then you have to it was like hunt the monster. But there was a game. It was on Super Nintendo. It was a horror game. I can't think of it. But those sprite games, even if you played in a horror game, like you could play Friday the 13th, right?
Yeah.
And like you said, it's not that they were scary; they were just frustrating because it's really hard to be scary when you're playing in pixelation and a lot of that stuff. It's just more or less like the frustrating aspects they put into the game.
But it seems like, oh, go ahead.
No, you go.
I was going to say, most horror games now are like, Dead by Daylight, where you're having like one killer trying to kill everyone, and the other ones are trying to like kill the killer or, activate like machines so they could escape the area. And that's like Killer Clowns from Outer Space. You have 3 clowns versus survivors. They have to like save the townspeople and kill the clowns, or the clowns could like kill the survivors who are fighting against them and then cocoon everyone. So that, and even like Evil Dead, they have that too, where you could play as like the good guys versus the demons. And I think people are liking that more than anything else just because of the multiplayer aspect to it.
I played Last of Us.
Oh yeah.
It's getting a TV show, and it falls into that horror category, I guess, because it's like a zombie game. But I liked that one a lot. Alan Wake was another one.
Man, yeah, Alan Wake is good.
And they're doing a remake right now. Well, I guess it's not a remake, but like a high def remake of Dead Space.
Yeah, Dead Space.
So what I loved about Dead Space was you had the shooter, but your gun was a tool. You know, I love that. And then Evil Within is another one that I think came out.
Oh yeah, that's a really good one.
14, 15. That was good. So going back to PlayStation days, Parasite Eve was what fell into the horror genre just because the story was kind of on that horror side.
My wife loves Parasite Eve. She has like the poster, everything, soundtrack. She would have liked that a lot if you said that. Yeah.
So those old PlayStation 1 games, I felt like they always did more with less, and now we have a lot more, and I feel like we're getting less.
Exactly.
BioShock, that's another really good horror series. I was a DM at GameStop for like 5 years, so my video game knowledge is a lot.
It's one of those things like growing up in the 80s and 90s. You go to Blockbuster, you try to beat a brand new video game, seeing like, okay, I got Friday till Monday. I had to beat this in like 3 days or less. And then, you just, with horror movies, it's like, oh, I don't know what that movie's about, but I love the front cover of the art.
Yep.
I have to watch it. Don't care what it is. I'm not going to read the back of it. It just has a wicked cover art. I have to watch it.
That's my take on comic books. Yeah. So I've tried to find artists who, because I don't like doing my own covers. I know a lot of artists do, but I know the limitations of my work, and I see some of these guys out there doing just these fantastic pieces.
Oh yeah, and for sure.
Coming from that 80s, 90s time period, a lot of those covers and those posters that you saw, the artists that worked on those, or even the graphic designers, didn't even know the whole story. So they got bits and pieces, and it's like, this is what it's about. Make something.
Yeah. Most Nightmare on Elm Street front covers had nothing to do with the movie.
Right. And I always, your first impression is that you're got to be your best impression.
Yeah.
And so like, I always try to do a few different things with my covers. Like this one, I have a funny cover. He's covered in sour cream, he's bloated, and it looks like he's dying, and there's tacos all around. Like, it's fun, right?
Yeah.
And then since you like horror, I'm not sure if you saw this cover right here, but this is my villain
Oh,
cover.
that's beautiful.
And so I do like a very like high detailed, intense, and then I do my all right. So again, we're like a buddy cop kind of thing. So I do my action cover.
Awesome.
Guys walking away from an exploding building. Like, does it have anything? I mean, certain aspects of it take place, but I always feel like the cover should, no matter what, be something that draws your attention, and it can be simple too. I've seen covers where it's just a logo, but the way the color of the logo is, like look at even like the Spawn cover where it's just his mask and it's the black with the white, but the way it's like done is just, oh wow, that pops. And I think like horror in general, horror games, my favorite game probably before Mass Effect came out was Metal Gear, and he has some
Metal Gear.
I always loved the covers of those games. Just very like so much depth in those covers. I'm a huge cover fan. Like if you don't have a good cover, I probably won't even check out what you're doing.
Well, that's the thing that really sucked about a lot of the like later '90s movies. I mean, even Scream had the same problem. Is that they transitioned from having amazing artwork cover and an amazing artwork poster to just having the faces of the actors on it.
So one of my problems with like the new Star Wars and Marvel movies is you just have this beautiful color scheme with faces, and it's like I already know who's in the movie. I don't care. Show me a ship exploding. Give me something. And you're right. Even like Halloween, the knife. With the pumpkin. Going from that into like the new ones where you just see Jason. Like, I don't know. Yeah. But to your point though, later on the night, and I think that kind of transitioned in the 90s to now, that became the thing. Let's have the faces or like the bust up. They used to do it to where you could like, you have your main character in front and then they'd stagger everybody out. I think that was like a common thing for about every movie that came out in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah, they did it with Scream. They did it with Final Destination, all that.
But then you go into
The Faculty.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah.
The guy didn't even know what he would... Actually, when they made Texas Chainsaw Massacre, one thing was supposed to be when they first started working on the film, Chainsaw wasn't there until the guy was in line at Christmas and he wanted to cut through the entire line. So they give him a name. It's like, it's this guy and he's got, a human flesh for a face. And like, I think they gave him like just the details of the bad guy and he made the cover.
And that's coming out into a video game too, where you could play as Leatherface or the survivors.
Oh, that's gonna be fun. Not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Something about in video. So one thing that video games have gotten right is a chainsaw, and I've played so many games where you have the like Gears of War had it, Back 4 Blood Back 4 Blood, Left 4 Dead, all that. They have the chainsaw.
Oh man, I love Left 4 Dead. Could play that still to this day.
Well, if you like Left 4 Dead, check out Back 4 Blood. It's literally the same.
It's the creators.
Yep. They just couldn't make Left 4 Dead 3, so they made Back 4 Blood.
Oh, yeah.
But they have mastered how a chainsaw should cut through a body. I don't know where these people have gotten it from, but
right.
I'm sure
Not going to question.
Yeah. I don't know where they do the research, but whoever did,
yeah,
it makes sense. So that game's going to be good.
Yeah. Well, we're at the 1 hour and going off 1 hour and 34 minutes. That's awesome. But yeah, everyone go follow this guy. Go follow Chris. His artwork is great. The story's great. I got his website down there. I got the Instagram, the link to the Kickstarter coming up next month. Just show love, and it's people who watch me always say like go support these guys because their books are great. No, he has a unique story, and just based off a tabletop like D&D style, why not? It's great.
So, people that want to check it out, I've made the first book free on my website. So if you just go to homebrewcomics.com, you can download the issue 0. It's absolutely free. And that I feel like I believe in my stuff so much, I just want to give it out there. So you can download that. And the Kickstarter link's actually on our website as well. So you can just go to homebrewcomics.com, click the Kickstarter there and check it out. So that way you can, download the book, see if you like, the first issue. It's the origin story. If you play D&D, it's your session 0 where you make your characters. It's actually called character sheets. So check it out if you like it. I'm always on Instagram, instagram.com/homebrewcomics. You can talk to me, ask any questions you want. I have a lot of content on there. I try to stay really active on there before the algorithm hates me. But the Kickstarter is going to launch, and I'm really stoked to get that one out there. We've done really well in the past, and I can't wait to get this next book out there.
Awesome. Well, when the Kickstarter comes on or announces or even ends, or you do another Kickstarter, you're more than welcome to come back on the show. Or if you want to just talk about like horror movies or anything in general, you're more than welcome.
Sweet. Keep me in the loop if you have a spot open. December through April, I work in taxes, so
Gotcha.
That time frame, I launched the Kickstarter last year in that time frame and definitely wore myself out a little bit too much. So I think I'm gonna do Kickstarter again May next year.
Gotcha.
It's part of the reason why I'm doing this one in October. I generally don't like doing a fourth quarter Kickstarter, but if I don't do it in October, it won't be until May, and I wanted to make sure this book got out there. So, but if you have any openings, definitely love to get on there and talk movies, talk horror, talk whatever you want.
Yeah, not a problem. All right. Well, everyone who's watching now or anybody watching the afterwards, y'all have a great night, and we'll see y'all next week. Peace.
So.